Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Career Chat. I'm Krista Harmon, one of the workforce development consultants with the Kent Intermediate School District. And we had a little technical difficulty with our internet, so I don't have my usual fabulous slide here, but we have Austin Redick with us today. He's a physician's assistant. Welcome, Austin.
Thank you, everyone. Happy to be here. Hopefully can give you some insight on what it's like to be a PA.
You know, it's a very popular job as far as young people are considering it. So let's take you back to when you were 16 or 17. Did you think you'd grow up to be a physician's assistant? Austin, what were you thinking?
I actually did not. My plan when I was 16 or 17 was one of a couple of things, either becoming a pilot or going to become a doctor. And was kind of close with being a physician assistant, but certainly went down that doctor path first before I figured it out.
What were you thinking about a doctor? Like, why did that even sound attractive to you at the time? And even the pilot, tell me about those two thoughts.
Well, pilot, I've always wanted to fly. That one's pretty easy. I think a lot of people have that dream, right? In terms of being a doctor, I think that was something I've always considered. I've always wanted to work in healthcare, and also parents, hey, you should be a doctor, right? And that's kind of what started me down that path. And that's also something I can talk about too, in terms of a separate path in my journey, a fork in the road where I did something else.
Yeah, that's really important because a lot of young people who are watching this are also getting some of that parental influence in their lives and decisions. And, I always try to help them understand this is going to be your life. You have to pick something that you're going to like. So you're in high school, you're getting pretty good grades, and that academic part's going to lead to potential college career with medicine.
Yeah, especially knowing that I wanted to go into medicine, and I particularly wanted to go to U of M. I knew that I had to have some good grades, so wasn't too much of an issue in high school. But again, we can talk about getting into college, getting into PA school, and oh man, it's a different ball game.
Had you done any type of job shadows or other career exploration in high school, or was it mostly just the ideas that you had in your head of what those careers would be like?
I didn't do much job shadowing in high school. I did do some shadowing in college, and that was very helpful. But no, in high school, I thought to be honest, I thought I knew everything. I thought I knew what I wanted, and life maybe doesn't turn out that way, and that's okay too, which is part of the story.
Yeah, so why don't you share a little bit about that fork in the road and kind of some of the decisions that took place?
Yeah, so I spent my entire undergraduate career at U of M preparing to be a doctor. And so I was applying to medical schools and took the MCAT, which is a big test you have to take to get into medical school, and did all of that stuff. And I started applying. I started getting what are called secondary applications back, where they ask you a bunch of questions, or you have to write essays. And I kind of got stuck. I was wondering if this is really what I wanted to do. I had never worked in healthcare. I had shadowed a few doctors, but I didn't really know what it meant to be a doctor. And I was basically at the start of committing myself to a 10 or more year process to become a physician. And that kind of scared me. And I stopped my application process and figured I should probably get a job in healthcare and figure out if this is what I really want. And so I actually went back and became a nursing assistant after I had already gotten my bachelor's degree from U of M, and started working in some local hospitals in Southeast Michigan, and got some good patient care experience, and also got my first exposure to PAs, being a physician assistant, what they do, and felt that was a better career path for me, and decided to pursue it.
That's great. So this undergrad degree, what were you deciding to get as far as that bachelor's? Is there a certain one that young people should consider getting when they want to go to med school? Tell us about that decision, because I know that's on young people's minds. What undergrad degree to get?
So with medical school, it's a little different than PA school. With medical school, you don't have to have a particular degree, and a lot of them don't have prerequisite courses that you have to take. Sure, you should probably be pretty well versed in biology and sciences and stuff, but they don't have those requisites. With PA school, it's different. They have very specific courses that you have to have taken before you go to PA school. I mean, a lot of them are very science and biology heavy. And so those are important to consider when you want to go into this career. And specific schools have different requirements too. So that's something to be aware of if you are interested and you are in, your first couple of years of undergrad, to be aware of what classes you need to be able to apply to some of these schools.
Yeah, that's really important, young people. If you're hearing what Austin's saying, is you have to kind of look ahead at the roadmap down the road and kind of back it out. So there's some things you should be doing early on to prepare you for that next level. So looking at PA schools and what kind of prerequisites they have is a smart step. So what
Yeah.
did you get your bachelor's degree in, Austin?
I got my bachelor's degree in neuroscience. It's very similar to a lot of other biology type degrees from U of M in terms of the classes that you take, with some additional extra specific classes, but it's very biology and science based.
So I think you were brilliant to, I know it was probably hard to do, but to become a nurse's assistant after you had your biology or your neuroscience degree from U of M, you probably got a lot of comments. Tell us about that experience of you just dealing with your own change of direction, how other people were feeling about that.
Yeah, so I was probably one of the more educated nursing assistants there. Was told that by my boss who hired me. It was humbling, to be honest. And I actually didn't plan very well in terms of making sure I took the right courses and do what I need to do to get into PA school, because I hadn't made that decision quite yet. And so I actually had to go back and retake classes at the local community college because the classes I had taken previously for my undergrad degree had expired. And that's a thing to consider too, is a lot of PA schools, you need to have taken some of these classes within a certain number of years. And so I had to go back, and I was taking general chemistry again after going through 3 or 4 years of chemistry at U of M. And so that was a bit humbling, but it was good because I learned that healthcare is what I wanted to do. I really enjoyed working with patients, and it really solidified my decision to go into healthcare, but just taking a slightly different path.
Yeah, and I think that's real. And I love that you're able to share your story, because a lot of young people, we all get those ideas of what we want to do, and we think it's going to be a straight line. And the reality is it's not for many adults when they share their stories on career chats. But I think you were wise to go back to become a nurse's assistant. What would you like young people to know while they're still in high school? Some of the things they could be doing to be getting that experience and understanding of what some of these occupations are before they go off to a 4-year degree, because sometimes maybe they don't even need the 4-year degree, right?
Absolutely. And I can't speak to things like trades or what have you, because that wasn't my experience, but I think that's a great route for a lot of people. But just getting exposure to the work environment, the workplace environment, and seeing what it's actually like, I think is really helpful. I don't know if I really understood the modern healthcare system until I worked as a nursing assistant. And you realize that there are a lot of little cogs in a big machine, and sometimes that can work for you, it can work against you. But knowing that you have that drive, that commitment to help people, and that's what keeps you going through no matter what, that's something that's great to find. And if that's in healthcare, if that's in another field, just having experiences in different areas, I think could be helpful for people. So really important, if you have opportunities to shadow different people in different careers, I think that's a great thing to do.
Yeah, I think that's great. And young people, things like summer camps, you can work with. If you go to like some special needs camps, for example, you might have health professionals that are there, and you're also getting around people who are different than you. Special Olympics is a great place to get around people. Anywhere you can get around diverse people, but the hospitals have entry-level positions that you can get in. My daughter was a nutrition tech, right? So she's pushing a food cart around, but she got to see all the different jobs that were in the hospital. So young people will be thinking about what you can do while you're in high school. So you graduated with your degree in neuroscience from U of M. You became then a nurse's assistant and really solidified that passion to be in the medical field, which is fantastic. And you started taking those classes again. What was the PA route, and help young people understand what that kind of education is all about?
Yeah, great question. So PA is what is known as a mid-level provider, and it's kind of a jargon, but what we do is we diagnose and treat disease. And the education consists of having 1, an undergraduate degree, and 2, most physician assistant programs are master's programs. So I personally went to Grand Valley for PA school, and it's a 2.5-year master's program. And the way to describe PA school would be medical school in 2.5 years instead of 4. And that's exactly what it is. It's like drinking from a fire hose. They model the PA school after how they trained physicians during World War II, because there's a physician shortage during the war. And so they created a program to train physicians within 2 to 3 years. And they've taken that model and applied it to PA school. So it is quite intense. It's the fastest and longest 2.5 years of your life. but it is so worth it. Yeah, I can't imagine doing anything else. I really, really love my job. So I met a lot of great people through PA school. So it was awesome.
What are some of the strategies that you used with it being so intense? Did you have study groups? Help young people just have a reality check of how to get through it. What were some of your
Yeah.
strategies?
So being a neuroscience major, that's actually one of the things I had a leg up on going into PA school, because I understood another kind of big term, but metacognition, thinking about thinking and thinking about how you think, how you learn. And so really developing those skills early is great. In high school, I honestly didn't really have to study a whole lot and do a whole lot. I got to U of M in undergrad, and man, that was an eye opener, because I actually had to be able to consume large amounts of material and retain a lot in order to do well. And understanding how the brain works and study strategies, absolutely worthwhile for anyone going into any career, because you're going to need to use that. And so just to name a few briefly, things like spaced repetition. So you're reviewing things, and you're not just reviewing them once, you're reviewing them again and again and again. Working for interval studying, where you're only studying for 25 or so minutes, and then you give yourself a 5-minute break, and you repeat that process as needed. And you'll really find doing some of these things, your efficiency goes way up, your retention goes way up, and you can learn how to utilize your time a lot better. And you really need to do that in a graduate program, really probably any graduate level program. That's going to be a very necessary skill, even for undergrad too.
Did you get some hands-on experiences as a physician's assistant in school? Did you get to do what people sometimes say clinicals, or get into hospitals? Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So PA school in general is broken up into 2 phases, what's called the didactic phase, or kind of the learning phase where you're in the classroom, and the clinical phase where you are actually in various clinical experiences following with other practicing PAs and experiencing the job in that way. And so the didactic phase, you're studying, you're sitting in class all day, 8 hours a day, and clinical phase is a bit more fun. You get to be experiencing actual medicine, and that's awesome. And you really, when you get to that point, you really appreciate being able to be there. It's a lot of fun. Can you hear me? Sorry, did we freeze?
When you were doing your actual in-hospital, I think it's my connection.
Okay.
The internet today is just really giving me a run for my money. When you're doing your clinicals, what were some takeaways from that experience, both positive or negative?
Well, when you're in clinicals, you go through rotations, and each rotation is involving a different field of medicine. And so you kind of understand or get an idea of what it's like to be a PA in each field. And so one of the good things is you learn what you like, and you learn the kind of jobs maybe you don't want to do. And even the ones you don't want to do are helpful, because you learn that, hey, maybe that's not for me. And for me, that rotation was probably surgery, just because it's a lot of standing and it's very busy, and you take call as a PA, meaning you have to be ready by your phone and go in if needed, and you work long hours. So that's one of the reasons why I like my job in urgent care, is I get to have a pretty nice schedule.
So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. So you get your degree, your master's degree in physician's assistant, and help people understand that transition? How do you get your first job? Does there a job board at your school? Like, just tell us how that works.
During your rotations, you can kind of think of those as auditions in a lot of ways. And so you want to make sure that you're a very prepared student, that you are putting in effort, that you show that you want to be there. And if you really click with the people that you are with, oftentimes they will offer you positions. And I was offered positions a couple of times in some of my rotations. And I didn't actually end up taking the ones that I was offered. I took a different job, but I also got hired in during the very start of the pandemic during 2020. So the job market was a little different then. You kind of had to take whatever was available, because there was a lot of people getting laid off, unfortunately.
So you ended up going with urgent care. Is this the first job then you had as a licensed professional?
Yes, it has been. And I started working in the summer of 2020. And so I've been practicing a little over 2 years now, and I love it. I work 3 days a week, and I can pick up extra shifts if I want to. My shifts are generally, well, we're open from 8 in the morning till 8 in the evening, but oftentimes I'm there up to 14 or 15 hours sometimes. So it's a long day, and it can be very tiring, but I get 4 days off per week. So the majority of my time I actually spend not working, which is one of the things that I really enjoy too.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that young people can understand that in the medical field, there's different environments. And I know people who do with cataracts, for example, those nurses work a 9 to 5 schedule. They have weekends off. Not everyone's going to be those 12-hour shifts or in a hospital setting. How did you know that that was even something that you'd want? Because that's kind of a sweet gig to get as a young professional.
So that's actually a very similar schedule that I worked when I was a nursing assistant. I would work 3 12-hour shifts per week. And so I knew that I liked having my time off. And when I work, I work the long hours, but I put those hours in one day and then kind of done. I do have a lot of classmates and colleagues now, I guess, who work in various areas, and they do work those 9 to 5 jobs in an office setting where they're seeing patients kind of like in a doctor's office. I have friends and classmates who work in like the emergency room, or people who work in surgery, and their hours are very different than most. So there's so many different opportunities and roles within the physician assistant field. And that's one of the great things about it is you can find a place that really suits your kind of lifestyle and what you want to be doing. And the freedom to move within and between those fields too. When you become a physician, you complete a residency program where you specialize in one thing, and you can't really move out of that one thing once you decide that's what you're going to do. And so you spend your life a lot of times working in that field. But as a physician assistant, if I end up getting sick of urgent care, I can go work in a specialty clinic if I want to, maybe an ear, nose, and throat doctor's office. Maybe if I wanted to go to the OR, I could work and maybe do spine surgery with a spine surgeon. If I wanted to work regular office hours, maybe I'd go be a cardiology PA.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've always encouraged young people about nursing is that there's that flexibility. Once you
Yes.
are tired, you can get training in the next department. And so if you were to move to like neurology even as a physician's assistant, would you get additional training then once you get there? Is that how you would get caught up to speed? Or is it the kind of work is similar in each of the departments?
Specialty offices, they're called specialties for a reason. So they have a very deep amount of knowledge, or I should say the depth of their knowledge is very deep. Whereas me being an urgent care provider, I have a large breadth of knowledge. I see lots of different things. So I have to know about a lot of different things. So I might not know as much about things, but I know a lot about a lot of different things. Whereas a specialist will know a lot about very narrow area. So sometimes that does require, it certainly requires additional training on the job. And that's something to consider. They typically say that a PA, no matter what role you're moving into, whether it's your first job or you're transitioning into a new role, it typically takes 6 months to a year for you to become a productive team member. And so most of that is on the job training. There are residency programs that have been developed for PA school, kind of like they have for medical school, but those aren't quite catching on. It's not very mainstream. They're pretty rare that someone would go through those programs.
Thank you for giving those insights, Austin. Young people would love to know, what your typical day might be. I know that's probably what you like because nothing's ever the same, but give us a sample then of what you would do as a physician's assistant.
Well, for me personally, my day starts 8 in the morning, and a lot of times there are people already checking in to be seen in urgent care when you get there. And especially lately, our volumes have been very high, meaning we're seeing lots of people. It's not like a regular doctor's office where you make an appointment and you go at your appointment time to be seen. Anyone who walks through our doors will be seen. Sometimes it might be a while, but they will be seen. So I'm seeing patients generally from the time I get there until the time I go home. And so we see a lot of coughs and colds. We see a lot of injuries, cuts, broken bones. We also see some more serious stuff, maybe things that shouldn't be in urgent care, but we have to manage those until we can get those people to the appropriate level of care. So we see everything. And that's, again, you kind of mentioned it. One of the nice things about it is you don't really know what's going to walk through the door, and that's kind of exciting.
Yeah, my personality would like that as well. And I think that's what I like young people to do in these career chats is start to do that self-assessment. Would I like that variety all day, or do I want something that's more scheduled? And that's part of this process, right? Is to figure out what's going to match you. So
Absolutely.
what is one of the things that's kind of your favorite part of your day, and what's the most challenging or things that you don't like?
Yeah. I mean, my favorite thing is just helping people. I like to be there for patients, and I like to listen to their concerns and make sure that their concerns are addressed, and just to be a caring person. That's something that drives me. Some things that I don't like. Man, sometimes it can be pretty stressful when you see that there are 15 or 20 people waiting, and there's you and maybe one or two other providers that have to be seeing these people. And it's pretty busy. And that's one thing with urgent care is we do a high volume. We see a high volume of patients relative to other clinics. A lot of family doctors will see maybe 15 to 20 patients a day in their clinic, whereas oftentimes we see 30 or more patients in one day. So it can be pretty busy, and you have to really know your stuff. And it really helps once you see people and know what's normal and what's not normal. But when you're new, man, it's gonna be a little scary and intimidating.
Yeah, and sometimes there's a term called imposter syndrome where like everybody thinks I know everything and I don't necessarily. Like, how do you deal with that? Because I think that's just a normal, real feeling, and I want young people to understand that's normal. Like when you start as a new professional, you're not going to know it all. You have to learn. How do you kind of cope with that, knowing that, man, people expect this from me, and I maybe don't know everything yet?
Man, you hit the nail on the head there. There's a lot of that, especially in the medical field, and everyone feels it. And like you said, it's normal. It's normal to feel that way, and that is actually a good response to have, because it kind of checks yourself. You say, hey, maybe I need to study more. Maybe I need to look into this a little bit more. Maybe I don't know as much as I should, or maybe I could know more. How do you deal with that? You have good people around you. A lot of my coworkers who are more experienced are very helpful, and everyone's always willing to field questions. If you aren't certain about something, you can, lean over next to you and say, hey, can you take a look at this x-ray? Can you take a look at this patient? Do you think you can give a second set of eyes on this? I'm not really sure what might be going on. Do you have any insight? So the people are really what are very helpful.
His goal is to help the people, right?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? You're cutting out a little bit.
I know, I see my red bars over here for the internet. What I was saying is that everybody
Let's see.
his goal is to serve it. Hang in, everybody, we're almost done. I'm losing it on my end, I'm sorry. So let me just move on to the next thing. Can you hear me right now?
I can, yeah.
Okay, great. In schools, we try to encourage what we call soft skills or employability skills, things like teamwork and critical thinking and communication. Could you maybe share a few of those and how that really shows up in your daily work, and why young people really need to learn that stuff while they're in high school from their teachers?
Oh man, it's every part of my job, from speaking to patients. You might be seeing a child as a patient, and so you have to be able to relate to them and be able to address their fears and concerns and kind of get on their level, and then also speak to mom about what can be going on. And so you're kind of almost switching languages. Code switching is, I think, the technical term for it, but you're doing a lot of that. And then it's healthcare in general is a team effort. It is a team sport. There's no one person doing everything, and you work with a lot of different people that have different roles, and being able to work with them well makes everyone's job a lot easier and a lot more fun too. You get to know people, and you get to really make friends and some fellow professionals, colleagues. So man, soft skills are so important, very important.
Thank you for giving some of those examples. I'm wondering, with where we started our conversation, we'll be ending here in just about 3 minutes. Did you pursue being a pilot at all? Is that something you're doing on the side, or did that dream kind of fade away a little bit?
I've always thought about getting my private pilot's license, and that still might be one of my life goals. I haven't given up on it by any means. Really, it was the opportunities, I think, that were somewhat, I wouldn't say dwindling, but it's a little more rare now. It's a little, the career I don't think is growing as much as it once was, especially for military pilots. And that was one of the things I wanted to do. I wanted to be a Navy pilot. And nowadays, I mean, within probably the next 10 or 20 years, it's going to be drones, right? Pilotless vehicles. So I think moving into medicine was probably a better career choice. The physician assistant career in general is booming. It is one of the largest, fastest growing careers in the United States. And for the education level that it takes, it is a great career, a comfortable living, and it's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, I think you're doing a good sales job on for young people to consider being a PA, physician's assistant, because like you say, you have that flexibility in your life. You're not working those 80 hours a week like maybe an anesthesiologist is, and they went to school and specialized that much more, and they're at the hospitals quite a bit. We have young people on here who are, making decisions. Why don't you finish up with our last 2 minutes with just that final word of wisdom? What would you, maybe something you would do over, or something that you feel like you did well, or just anything else advice for young people trying to figure it all out?
Well, I'll go back to me kind of transitioning away from medical school, and that was a pretty big life choice. And it was not one that was very easy, and it was scary. And I did have people in my family who questioned that and who still wonder when I'm going to be a doctor, to be honest. But I wouldn't necessarily let those people push you into something you don't want to do or that you don't feel is right. And you may have a vision for your future of what it could or should be, and just know that it's almost never going to be that. And getting older, you realize that a bit more. And so the expectations change a little bit, and you learn to enjoy the process more of finding out who you are and what you want to be. And I wouldn't change my path. And I think even through the hard times, that was helpful for me to know that.
That's gold stuff right there. That's good stuff, Austin. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us today. You've been a great role model for us.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here, and appreciate you guys having me.